Have you ever woken up, looked in the mirror, and wondered where the time went? Maybe you noticed a few more lines on your face or felt a little creak in your knees, and suddenly, this quiet thought slipped in, I'm getting older, and what does that really mean? If that sounds familiar, you're not alone. I've been there too, and so have millions of others. It's natural to feel a flicker of fear about aging, or even about what comes after. But here's the good news, that fear doesn't have to stick around. We can face it, tame it, and turn it into something that actually makes life richer, not scarier. Today, I want to walk with you through a handful of simple, down-to-earth ways to let go of that fear of aging and death. These aren't big, overwhelming changes, they're small shifts you can start right now, today, to feel more at peace and even excited about the years ahead. We're going to talk about why those worries creep up, how to flip them into something positive, and how to live in a way that feels full and fearless, no matter what your age. So, grab a cup of tea, get cozy, and let's dive in together. First, let's start with something that hits close to home for a lot of us, accepting that change is part of the ride. I remember chatting with my neighbor, Ruth, a few months back. She's 72, sharp as a tack, and always out tending her garden. One day, she said to me, I used to dread every birthday after 60. I'd think, oh no, I'm running out of time. But then I realized something, every flower in my garden changes. They bloom, they fade, they come back different next year. And I'm kind of like that too. That stuck with me. Aging isn't a straight line down, it's a cycle, a natural rhythm. The fear comes when we fight it, when we tell ourselves it's all loss. But what if we looked at it like Ruth does? What if we saw every wrinkle or gray hair as a sign of a life we've lived, not a life we're losing? Here's how you can start doing that. Take a moment each day, maybe when you're brushing your teeth or sipping your morning coffee, and look at yourself with a little kindness. Notice something you've gained with age. Maybe it's patience you didn't have at 40, or a story you love telling your grandkids. Tell yourself, this is me, right now, and I'm still growing. It's not about pretending everything's perfect, it's about seeing the beauty in where you are. Ruth started doing this, and she told me it's like she gave herself permission to enjoy her days instead of counting them down. That's the first step, letting go of the fight against change and leaning into it instead. Now, once you start easing into that mindset, there's another piece that really helps, finding purpose that lights you up. I'll be honest, I used to think purpose was some big, lofty thing, like writing a book or saving the world. But it doesn't have to be. A few years ago, I met this guy named Tom at a community center. He's 68, retired, and was feeling pretty lost after his job ended. He'd sit there, quiet, like he wasn't sure what he was even doing anymore. Then one day, he started helping out with the kids' art class, just handing out supplies, chatting with them. Nothing fancy. But you should have seen his face light up when one of those little ones hugged him and said, "Thanks, Grandpa Tom." He told me later, I didn't realize how much I needed that, feeling like I mattered. That's the thing, purpose isn't about size, it's about connection. It's about doing something, anything, that makes you feel alive and tied to the world. Maybe for you, it's planting a few flowers like Ruth, or calling a friend who needs a laugh, or even teaching your neighbor's dog a new trick. Whatever it is, start small. Pick one thing this week that feels good to you, something that gets you out of your head and into the moment. When Tom found his spark with those kids, he said the fear of what's next started fading. He wasn't so worried about death anymore because he was too busy living. And that's what we're after here, living so fully that the fear doesn't have room to grow. So, we've talked about accepting change and finding a little purpose to keep us grounded. Those are big steps, and they set the stage for something else I want to share, learning to let go of what we can't control. That's where this journey really starts to open up, and it's something we can all practice, no matter how many candles are on the cake. So, we've been talking about how accepting change and finding a little purpose can shift the way we see aging, and that brings us to something we all bump into at some point, learning to let go of what we can't control. I know, it's easier said than done. I used to lie awake at night, worrying about things like, what if I get sick, or what if I can't keep up with the grandkids anymore? It's like my mind was trying to solve a puzzle with missing pieces. But here's what I've learned, and maybe it'll click for you too. Worrying about what might happen doesn't stop it from coming, and it sure doesn't make today any better. Think about it like this. My friend Linda, she's 67 and one of the most grounded people I know, told me once about how she used to fret over every little ache or pain, thinking it was the beginning of the end. Then one day, she was watching a storm roll in from her porch. The wind was howling, the trees were bending, and there wasn't a thing she could do to stop it. She said, I realized I could either sit there stressing about the roof or just watch the rain and let it pass. That's when she started letting go. Not in a big, dramatic way, but little by little. She'd catch herself worrying and say out loud, Linda, that's not yours to fix right now. And then she'd go make a cup of tea or call her daughter instead. You can try that too. Next time you feel that knot in your stomach about something you can't change, like how fast time moves or what tomorrow might bring, pause for a second. Take a deep breath, maybe even say to yourself, this isn't mine to carry today. Then do something small that feels good, water a plant, flip through an old photo album, or just sit and listen to the birds. It's not about ignoring reality, it's about giving yourself permission to step away from the stuff that's out of your hands. Linda says it's like she's lighter now, and I get that. When you stop wrestling with what you can't control, there's more room to enjoy what you can. And that ties right into another thing that's helped me a ton, finding comfort in the right now. I'll let you in on a little moment from my life. A while back, I was sitting on my back steps, watching the sun dip below the trees. The air was cool, the sky was turning pink, and for once, I wasn't thinking about yesterday or tomorrow. I was just there, feeling the breeze, hearing a dog bark somewhere down the street. It hit me, how many times had I missed this kind of peace because I was too busy looking ahead or back? We spend so much energy wondering what's coming or regretting what's gone, but the truth is, this moment, the one we're in, is where life happens. Here's a simple way to lean into that. Pick one thing you do every day, like eating breakfast or brushing your hair, and really be there for it. Notice the taste of your toast, the warmth of your coffee, the way the bristles feel against your scalp. It sounds small, but it's powerful. I started doing this with my morning tea, just sitting quietly for 5 minutes, letting the steam hit my face, tasting the honey. It's become my little anchor, something that pulls me back to the present when my mind wants to wander off into worryland. And the more I do it, the less I feel like I'm racing against time, or like time's racing against me. There's this woman I met at a park once, Margaret, who's 74 and walks her little terrier every morning. She told me she used to dread getting older because it felt like everything was slipping away, her strength, her plans, her people. But then she started focusing on what she could feel in the moment, the grass under her shoes, the way her dog's ears flop when he runs. She said, I figured out I'm not gone yet, and neither is this day. That stuck with me. When you root yourself in the now, it's like you're telling that fear of aging and death, you don't get to steal this from me. It's not about pretending the hard stuff doesn't exist, it's about claiming the good stuff that's still right in front of you. So, letting go of what we can't control and sinking into the present, they go hand in hand, don't they? They're like two sides of the same coin, helping us loosen the grip of fear bit by bit. And once you get the hang of that, it opens the door to something else I've found really freeing, redefining what aging means to you personally. That's where this all starts to feel less like a burden and more like a chance to live on your own terms. So, we've been talking about letting go of what we can't control and finding peace in the moment, and that brings us to something I think can really turn things around, redefining what aging means to you. I used to picture getting older as this slow fade, like the colors draining out of a painting. You know, less energy, less adventure, less me. But then I met someone who flipped that whole idea on its head. His name's George, he's 79, and I ran into him at a local coffee shop. He was sitting there with a sketchbook, drawing the people walking by, and when I asked him about it, he grinned and said, "I spent 50 years working a desk job I didn't love. Now, this is my time. Aging's not the end, it's my encore." That word, encore, stuck with me. What if we stopped seeing our later years as a winding down and started seeing them as a chance to do things we've always wanted, or to just be who we really are? George wasn't sketching because he had to, he was doing it because it lit him up, because he decided aging could mean freedom instead of limits. And that's something we can all play with. What's your encore? Maybe it's picking up a paintbrush like George, or finally planting that herb garden you've dreamed about, or just giving yourself permission to sit and read a book without feeling guilty. It doesn't have to be grand, it just has to be yours. Here's how you can start. Take a quiet minute, maybe tonight after dinner, and ask yourself, what's one thing I'd love to try, or one way I'd love to spend my days, if I didn't think it was too late? Write it down if you want, or just hold it in your mind. Then take one tiny step toward it. If it's painting, grab a cheap set of watercolors from the store. If it's gardening, buy a single pot of basil. For me, it was dancing. I'd always loved it but felt silly trying at my age, until I put on some old jazz tunes one afternoon and shuffled around my kitchen. No one was watching, and I laughed so hard I nearly cried. It wasn't about being good, it was about feeling alive. When you redefine aging as your time to shine, that fear of running out starts to fade, because you're too busy making the most of what's here. And as you do that, something beautiful happens. You start to see that all these little shifts we've talked about weave together. Accepting change, finding purpose, letting go of control, living in the now, and making aging your own, they're not separate tricks. They're pieces of a bigger picture, one where you get to decide what your days feel like. I think about Ruth in her garden, or Tom with those kids, or Linda watching the storm pass, or Margaret walking her dog, and even George with his sketches. They've all found ways to say, I'm still here, and I'm going to live this my way. And you can too. It's not about dodging the tough stuff, aging and death are part of the deal, but about filling the space between with things that matter to you. I'll be honest, it's not always easy. Some days, the fear still creeps in, whispering about what might go wrong or how much time I've got left. But then I step outside, feel the sun on my face, or call a friend and hear them laugh, and I remember, none of us know exactly what's ahead, but we've got right now, and that's plenty to work with. Small changes, little moments, they add up. They build a life that feels less like something slipping away and more like something you're holding onto, shaping with your own hands. So, I'd love to hear from you. What's one thing you've done, or want to do, to make aging feel less scary and more yours? Drop it in the comments below. I read every one, and it's amazing to see how we all inspire each other. If this video's given you a spark or a smile, give it a thumbs up. It really helps more people find these ideas. And if you're new here, hit that subscribe button so we can keep exploring this journey together. There's so much more to talk about, and I'm here for it. Here's the thing, you're not just getting older, you're getting to live. Every day's a chance to tweak the story, to make it brighter, fuller, truer to you. So here's to that, to letting go of the fear and stepping into whatever comes next with a little more heart and a lot less worry. Here's to living your best life, right now, at any age.